I do really believe 100% from every part of me that everyone has the capacity to be able to do the things that they want and not to be held back by the mental baggage that's in our head that we want to push through.
Welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. In each episode, we get down and personal with people who go after the things they want to make all their wildest dreams come true. Join us as we unveil and dissect a formula for what it takes to do the thing. Here is your host, Stacy Lauren.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. This is Stacy Lauren. So this is exciting. Today's guest is someone that I've actually had the good fortune of meeting I think it's been a few months ago, and he's actually helping me build a product that I've been designing, and it's been fun getting to know him and all of the amazing things that he does in his company. And I just felt like it was the perfect time to bring him on because he is definitely someone that does the thing in everything he does. So I just wanted to welcome Matt Nuccio to the show. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Stacy. How are you today?
I am doing great. How are you?
So far, so good. Still early, though.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the coffee to kick in, and then I'll give you a better answer.
I'll ask you then in the middle. Well, if we could start off, I'd love to just have you share your story with the listeners about you and what you're about.
Sure. I mean, where do you want me to begin? It's a long story.
Your childhood dreams. No. So pretty much it's a good question because this is a podcast about doing the thing. So I think pretty much whatever you think would be relevant to that. So different things that you've done or that you're doing now that sort of represent that. So just, more about you, essentially.
Sure. Well, I guess, the thing, right? So I guess let's define what that thing would be for what I do. At the end of the day, it's just about, for me, it's being creative, having a good creative outlet and being creative in a way that solves problems, creates solutions, both in the physical sense and in the, in the ethereal sense. We're creating from nothing usually, right? We're creating products. So I do a lot of toys and gifts and we also do products for food companies and housewares and hardwares. But, what we do is we have to analyze something, look at it, figure out how to make it look cool, how to make it affordable, and how to make it, so the consumers will get it and it will function and they'll do what they want it to do and, keep them happy for a long time. And, where did that stem from? How did I start that? Well, I was really just fortunate to grow up with some very good parents. My father started working in the toy industry in 1969. He worked for a company called Aurora and then Ideal Toys, just doing, graphic design. And then he moved over to a company called HG Toys the year I was born, where he kind of took a VP position. Well, not kind of, he did. He took a VP position in charge of design and marketing. And he was there until I was in high school when the company was bought by another company in Chicago. And they started Design Edge out of the family garage. And I was, as I often say, drafted from day one, whether I wanted to be there or not. A 14-year-old kid. I wanted to go hang out with my friends, but instead I'm sitting in the garage doing paste up mechanicals and cutting things out with X-Acto knives and gluing things down and inhaling a lot of rubber cement. It was, I guess, some good times. But the creative part and the solutions were always there. My mother, she was an art teacher. And, art was just always around us, art and music and just, and that real emphasis on being original and creative. We weren't always just taught to just copy things. It was always like, how can we improve upon things and really apply it to whatever it is we were doing. And I don't know, does that sort of answer some of your question?
Yeah, that gives me a good foundation. It's funny because when I first was asking you to come on, I was thinking more in terms of you, because I see how you do the thing with your business, right? But then I didn't even think of it from the perspective of you helping others do the thing by what you're helping them create. So you're literally doing the thing really every day, every time you take on a client and you're
from scratch. I always say I like my clients are the lead singer. I'm the lead guitar player. I'm standing in the background, like helping them out, but not taking the spotlight. We're the back end to dozens and dozens of companies. We do everything for them. Their design, their engineering, their manufacturing. I set them up with distribution, get them in front of buyers, everything that needs to get done, and I gladly do it from behind the curtain. It's too exhausting to be, for me to be in the front of everything. I'm quite happy making other people's dreams come true.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's it's why you're successful, right? Because when you care more about the person that you're working with being successful than yourself, then it's like it kind of ripples on to everything for you too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I don't sit down and think of it that way exactly. I just naturally get excited when things start happening for people, and they get excited. It's good times. It's really, it's product development's a roller coaster. It's some serious highs and some serious lows, and but when you finally get something to market, there's nothing better than that. It's to see something that you had thought of 6 months, a year, 6 years ago, whatever, finally on a store shelf or on a retailer or available on Amazon, and can touch it and hold it, and people start talking about how great it is it's awesome. It's a great feeling.
Yeah. And so can you give a little bit more example of like what your business does, just so everyone understands exactly what you do? Sure.
We are a one-stop shop product development company. So what does that mean? People come to us with a concept, and we will then design it, engineer it, get it costed, manufacture it, and set them up with distribution channels through sales reps, organizations, and or distributors. So it's, from A to Z, as they say. Yeah. So, somebody has a good idea and they bring it to us, we'll turn it into a reality, but it has to be a good idea. That's the other thing. If the product doesn't have merit, it's not a fun experience. It's
right.
It's got to have a clear channel to success. It's very similar to say the music business, right? First, you got to find the song, right? If you don't have a good song, you don't have anything. So I listen to a lot of bad songs. So the not so fun part of my job is telling people that they have a bad song, or their baby's ugly, whatever.
That's so funny.
And some people, will shrug it off and it's a 2-second conversation. And other people will get very offended. And a couple of times I've had people screaming at me, and I'm just like, I'm sorry if I don't see it, I don't see it. I can't help you, and I still wish them tremendous success. And, it just because I don't get it doesn't mean someone else won't, but I can't get behind something I don't get.
Yeah. And I really like that. And I think that was cool. When we were working together, because I had a prototype for the product, and I ended up getting it at a toy store just to kind of start using the functionality to make sure that it worked for me. And then I liked that you wanted me to send it to you too, so you could use it and test it out. And then I think a lot of your ideas came from you actually using it.
Yeah. I totally took it home and I used it. And, I needed to make sure it was something that I would use. Right. And I did. And I totally get the merit of it. I don't want to get too far into it because, we obviously don't want to expose what it is before it comes out. But yeah, but there's been other times when I've had people send me stuff and then I'm like, oh, this is not what I thought they were talking about at all, or it's not translating well into the physical. It's something that's just way too ethereal. It's hard. It's again, to use music or movies as a reference. It's lots of movies and songs come out every single year, and very percentage-wise, very few are successful. It's not that easy, and even sometimes people think, well, it's a matter of money. I'm like, not necessarily. Every year there's some Hollywood blockbuster that tanks its opening weekend, right? It happens. There's no true formula. There's ways to maintain success once you found it, but when you're starting something from the ground up, you have to prove it beforehand. You can, if you've got a successful brand, you can use analytics and have some strong marketing to keep it afloat. But out the gate, you can try to mitigate as much as you like, but it's still, until the public gets it in their hands, there's no telling where it's going to go.
Yeah, so true. So have you noticed any common characteristics with the people that you work with that are the ones that are doing the thing, where they're coming to you and then they're successful? Have you noticed anything that's kind of trends with like who your avatar is?
Yeah, I mean, it's that the entrepreneurial spirit, really. They also tend to get very excited about the products that they're working on, but the more successful ones aren't married to it per se. That's the hardest thing, when people really fall in love with something very early in the development. It's not completely fleshed out, and then they don't want to change anything because it's been that way and that's the way they remember it. And things have to change sometimes because sometimes simply the costing doesn't work, and you have this great idea, but you wanted this very specific way, and you're in love with this very specific part of it that can triple the price of it. And, maybe you'd sell these all day long if they were $20, but no one's buying it for $100.
Yeah. So one of the things would be just really being open-minded and flexible with not so rigid, basically, it sounds like, as a characteristic. Yeah.
And open-minded's a good term, which I always kind of find it funny because it tends to imply like some sort of, I always feel like someone's open-minded. Sounds like it's a pleasant way to be. But I think open-minded is harder than people realize, right? You have to sometimes, go against your innate feelings of something, right? So sometimes you have to, understand that your baby is ugly, right? And things have to be changed.
Yeah.
And then sometimes these things happen in many parts of the development process. It's not just like, this isn't just me dictating from behind some drafting table, like, it's got to look like this because, I'm the guru and I think it should look like that. No, sometimes these changes get barked to us from way further down the road. A retail buyer might go, it's great, but, I need it for 30% less. Now we've got to make some major changes, that can be impactful, and it can really sometimes dilute a product, but sometimes it can improve a product because you're forced to streamline it.
Yeah. And so I don't know if I've told you about the podcast in terms of like what I'm doing with it, but pretty much the idea is that everyone's got a formula for how they do the thing, right? And it's kind of been coming out through the interviews that a lot of this common patterns keep coming up, which is kind of cool because it's like literally I'm coming up like through these interviews, I'm able to like see how you could channel these things to be able to do the thing. And you're bringing up a really good piece of the formula, which with this open-minded piece, because something that's been really common throughout is really letting go of your ego, to be able to just keep your mind open, be flexible, and pivot when needed. So yeah, I'm glad that you're able to verbalize that so well.
And some of the best companies I've ever worked for, at whatever stage they're in, really allow their employees to do what their employees do. And some of the worst ones are the ones that are completely micromanaged, and I can tell those are going to sink when I start working with them, when, they're involved in every little bit and piece, and they have to oversee it, and they have to yes and know it. And, usually these people, not only are they not allowing the people that work for them to do their thing, they're also loading themselves up with so much responsibility and so much decision-making that they slow things down, and they force themselves to second think everything that they do. So, if there's an anti the thing, it's micromanaging. It can destroy you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I actually did that a little bit too much with my last business. And that was kind of one of the big things I want to change as I move forward is, that like thinking that people have to come to you for everything, and really being able to empower people to be able to like be more confident with their decisions.
Yeah, but it's tricky because at the same time, if you're the owner or operating a business, you kind of want to know what's going on all the time, right? So the opposite of micromanaging is like rogue employees who just start making all these decisions without even talking to you about it. Mm-hmm. So, and especially in an earlier stage of a company, right? When you're really in that early throes of being an entrepreneur and you've got 2 or 3 people working for you, or, even as much as 10, it can be dangerous to give them too much power. So like, how do you balance that? Right. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I guess it's just good teamwork. But then you can get bogged down in meetings all the time, right? That's the other thing I see. Like, they want to have a meeting over everything, and you spend, 5 out of 8 hours a day in meetings. And most of those meetings, like, just sort of are a waste of time because you discuss 2 things, and then someone's got to email somebody about something. And like, if you really shot that all the dead time in the meeting, 4 hours of meeting, maybe 30 minutes of it was truly productive.
Yeah, I know. One of the things we started doing was we did these like 10-minute standing only meetings. So then you didn't get, this is before COVID, you didn't get like stuck sitting down. Because otherwise, once you're sitting, you're toast, that meeting's going to be at least an hour, pretty much. Well, so let's talk more about when they come to you and they're excited. It's kind of cool because you have such a good insight into people, when they're coming to you, they've got this new product and, they're excited about it. So the excitement, because another piece of the formula is the why, like having to have a why, you want to do something. Do you think it's coming from like that place? It's like, I really want to do this. Like for me, it was, we won't give exactly what the product is, but it's surrounding habits. Cause for me, that's so important because I let go of all that stuff for a while and didn't take care of myself and all this stuff. And so for me, that's like a huge piece of why I'm excited about this product. Cause it's been so important for me in my life. Do you find that's a common thread where people have some kind of reason that they've chosen this product, or is it coming from something else?
Well, that certainly can be a reason, right? That's, obviously if there's a good story behind a good product is great, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not always the reason. And I found myself often many times I have to sort of step back when someone comes to be very enthusiastic, because until I truly know what the product is and feel I can get behind it, I have to be careful not to be infected by their enthusiasm, because, I don't want to just help them because they feel like they've got the passion for it, because that passion could be applied to the wrong product and, could kill everything, could destroy everything, if it's, just because you're excited about something doesn't necessarily mean it's great.
Yeah, that's true. And then when they're coming to you and they're excited, is it like, what do they get? Where does that excitement come from? Do you know, in terms of, have you noticed any common thread there?
I mean, it's all over the place. Some people, on the positive things, people sometimes like they stumbled upon something that, hasn't existed or has a need. Those are always great. Sometimes that enthusiasm just comes about by the fact that they've made a big life change and they want to try something new, and they've gotten something that's strong that they can get behind, and it's given them new purpose, which is, always fantastic. But then sometimes that enthusiasm just comes from an overinflated ego, right? They just, they will. Yeah. I've had, some people will literally pitch me every thought that comes into their head. And I'm like, yeah, you should really sit down and cross some of those things off before you talk to me about them.
Yeah. And then, so when you see the person, then you make the product for them. I'm assuming there's a percentage that succeed and there's a percentage that don't. Have you seen anything with the people that do succeed that has been a commonality with them, in addition to being open-minded and having a purpose and all that stuff?
Well, the best way to succeed in any retail environment, right, as a startup company, is to not be a one-item company, right? So anybody wants to try and get into, having a company that manufactures goods, whether they be toys, games, gifts, housewares, or hardwares, they need to be aware out the gate that they need a line, because buyers aren't going to look at single items. And plus, you're increasing your chances of success, because if one item tanks, the other other item or two or three can help keep the company afloat. Of course, if you've got 5 bad items, you have 5 bad items. But if you have 5 great items, you have 5 great items. But this is the reason why large retailers won't even meet with one item companies. Walmart doesn't want to be, making the papers again for putting some small startup out of business when they ordered, 400,000 units of something, and that person was super excited and had to remortgage their home to pay for it, only for it not to sell and put them out of business.
Yeah, definitely. So them having a line of products helps. And then is there anything that you've noticed like with the person that helps that like, some people come and they're scattered and other people are probably, like really organized, or is there anything kind of trait wise with the people?
Sure. I guess I answered that wrong for the theme of the podcast, but
well, no, honestly, I think it's great, Matt, because like I was thinking about it as I didn't even think about this when I first asked you, but as you were talking about what your company does, and obviously I know what it does, right? I'm using you, but I'm like, oh, it's actually kind of cool that you're on here, because this podcast is teaching people to do the thing. And I've had a lot of business owners on here because that's my world. And granted, do the thing is also traveling and it's starting relationships and it's meant to be other things besides business. But I do have a lot of people on here that do want to start into business. And so I'm imagining that if someone listening is like, I want to start a business, and then all of a sudden your interview makes them think of a product that they want to do, then now I'm giving them a resource that they could reach out to help create the product. So anyway, I'm glad that you talked about it from that perspective, because I think that I want to give people resources for ways that they can, start businesses. So anyway, just to answer that, it wasn't wrong. It was just, I wanted more.
I think being flexible is probably the number one thing.
Okay.
It's flexibility, it's patience. It's this weird combo of being able to move really fast and be patient at the same time, which doesn't sound like it would work. But those seem to be the people that I see have success. Like they know they have to get this done really quick. And the mistakes are going to happen because they are moving quick and they are new and they are bootstrapped. And then when those, things don't, when things don't happen, they have to be able to, absorb them. But at the same time, they also have to understand so the patience part comes in, and it's like, they have to also stop and understand and learn and not just move 500 miles an hour.
Yeah. So it sounds like, are they like the type that are learning from any kind of mistake or any kind of problem that comes up? Does it seem like?
I would say they're the type of person that can learn as they go along, and they're paying attention.
Yeah, I like that. And then are you open to sharing any of the stuff that you do? Like what are some of the coolest products that you've helped kind of put out in the world?
There's so many things that we've done over the years. Where do I even begin? We've I can't talk about anything I'm working on right now, because that's in general, as you're aware. So, then the larger companies, we're usually 2 to 3 years out. So, but in my career, we've helped launch Angry Birds. We worked on Tickle Me Elmo. Pogs. We did Warily the Power Glove, relaunching of Creepy Crawlers. We've worked on Monopolies and Sorries and countless other famous board games. Worked with brands such as Barbie and Disney and Marvel. And then we also do a lot of food companies, like I said. So we work with Dunkin' Donuts and Buffalo Wild Wings and countless pizza chains and fast food chains. And my big joke is that our clients range from Hasbro to Hooters, because it's true.
That's cool.
So the client base and the products have been across the board, and it's we've worked on such a wide variety of things, and there's tons of success stories, but what is a success, and at what point is it deemed a success, right? Sometimes it's because the products turned into gigantic numbers and become an institution. Well, that can take 20 years, right? For something like that to become, part of the American lexicon. Like, everybody knows, what that product is. There's very, for every monopoly, there's some game that you've never heard of, that's probably just as good. It's a hard question to answer. Like, how do you deem something a success? I get excited about the small successes, like as they're happening, more so than the stuff that's become sort of the pedigree of what we've worked on.
Yeah, I like that because I think that helps you celebrate more, and not so focused on an outcome, but you're focused more on the process in a way.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about the process for me. I have no interest in having a big showcase of everything that we've ever done, but that's me in general on everything. It's I've also a musician. I've been in bands, and I like the songwriting process and the recording process. I don't mind playing gigs and playing out, but I don't really get into it. It's not my favorite part of things. I feel like I'm just a live jukebox at that point, and I really don't like doing cover songs.
Yeah.
So it's just in my personality.
So you have such a huge creative side. Do you have a method, like before you're about to do something creative, that you get yourself in that headspace, or does it just come naturally to you?
I think I'm like, that switch is just permanently on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, to the point where it's like a detriment on other things in my life. Like when I have to sit with my accountant and I'm like, is there a creative way to do this?
Yeah. And so do you think that's because since you were 14, you were like having to be a part of doing this? So it's just, that's how your brain operates then, where you're just, or was it before then even?
It's even before then. I mean, it was really just heavily promoted by my parents, and they're very creative themselves. And my grandparents on both sides were artists as well. So that creative, we always put more value on the creative than anything else. In fact, like people always like, oh, Matt, you're an artist, you're a musician. I'm like, I think I'm more creative than I am technically good at any of those other things. I'm not, I'm a good musician. I'm a good draftsman, but I'm not great. I'm not, I think if I purely had to like make my living as a landscape or portrait artist, I wouldn't be doing too well. But as far as, being creative and finding new solutions for things, I just love that. Like, it's just, any time we can change something up and get away with it, totally. That's the exciting part.
Yeah. Do have you thought back, or maybe I'm giving it to you now, but like, what was like the number one thing your parents did to nurture that for you?
Jeez. I don't even know. It's really hard, I mean, there's some, my parents are a big part of it, but, culture was, pop culture and the things I was into as a kid as well. I mean, I clearly remember being obsessed with Sgt. Pepper as a child, like really young. Like I think I was going to preschool, and I'd come home and I had this Sesame Street record player, and I would put it on the Sesame Street record player and just like sit in front of the record player and like flip through the cover and, look at all the famous people on the cover of Sgt. Pepper and read the lining. And then I'd slowly learn more and more as I got older about how they were just changing things. And it was, the reason it was such an important album is because it was designed to be done in the studio and not have to be repeated live. So they got to try all these new things, and it really changed the face of music. And I mean, that always inspired me to like, how do I apply those sort of things into anything that I do? And it also was the beginning of something that to this day gets me excited, is I really like the first of anything. I don't care who's a better basketball player than Jordan, because Jordan was the original super basketball star, and as is Babe Ruth or Muhammad Ali, right? And the Beatles' Art of Music. Like, those are the guys that get me excited. Like, I know there'll always be somebody better than them, and their records will always be broken, but they were the first to really do that, right? And I feel like that's an important thing, like, because those are the people that get into it because they have a passion to create in it, and they're not just competing, right? Like Tony Hawk didn't become this world-renowned skateboarder because, he saw a clear path to being a millionaire. Not at all. He's just really just into skateboarding and trying new things and trying to break the mold. And it just, things happen around him, because if you can be, that's a scene, right? And that's how a scene gets created. And, I like to be part of a scene or in the forefront of a scene. And I feel like toys have been blossoming in the last 20 years. When I finally started becoming of age in the early aughts, all of a sudden we're doing all these collectible toys that, for 40-year-old guys in their basement, that we weren't working on 10 years prior. In fact, I remember growing up and you'd hear that the Japanese adults would buy toys and read comic books, and people just thought that was the strangest thing. Fast forward to 2022 and, full-grown adults go to Marvel movies and collect and go to Comic-Con and collect action figures. And, toys are no longer just for children.
Yeah, it kind of adds to that playfulness and kind of opening up other portals, I'm sure, to be able to have that.
Yeah. And I think that's these are all sort of firsts, and they're growing, and it's the industry is moving, and it's expanding, and it's like, I'm happy to be part of that wave that's blowing through it. And that inspires me.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, do you mind sharing? We talked about this on our coaching call when we were talking about the product and doing that. Do you mind sharing that biography thing that we talked about? Are you open to that?
I'm trying to remember which biography thing.
We were just talking about how you like, because another piece of the formula is people educating themselves and then nourishing their mind with like good positive stuff, and that really helps them do the thing, and it also could help you help others do the thing. And I'm just thinking what we talked about with you reading people's biographies and seeing.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's what you mean by biographies. I'm like starting to think like, did I write a biography that I didn't know about? Yes. So yeah, I am also obsessed with reading autobiographies, not just biographies.
That's right.
Autobiographies. Yes. I devour autobiographies. I want to hear from the person that did it, how they did it, and what they had to give up to do it, and and what came of it once they did do it. And yeah, just like one after the other. I read them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. That's really fun for me. But sometimes I've read so many that now I'm starting to blur some of the stories together. So
I think it's cool though, because you're probably blurring them together because you're seeing the common patterns, right? You could probably help me write the book.
Yeah. Well, if you need to write an autobiography of a British rock star from the 1960s, I can easily start off the opening chapter talking about how your hometown was obliterated by the Nazis and you had to wait online to get bread. And then this is how you related to the blues, right? This is how these guys, every single one of them starts off with that.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, no, I like that. And I remember you telling me that, and I was like, oh, that's a huge piece of who you are, because you're absorbing, your whole mind is getting, exposed to all these different people. And like you said, like how they reached the point that they did and what they had to overcome. And I find that stuff so fascinating, to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously to me too. It's sometimes I don't even think these people know how they got to where they're at, and then they act like it was all happenstance, but it's not always true. Yes, being in the right place at the right time certainly can help. But there's got to be something special beyond that, something that allowed you, any of these things that we're talking about, right? It just maybe your ability to be agreeable, right? Or your ability to not micromanage. But then, some of these guys were micromanagers. Like I think we even spoke about Miles Davis, because I think when I was telling you that was a particularly good one. He was like notorious. Like, you don't screw up in his band. Same thing with Frank Zappa. Like, he'd fine you if you missed a note on stage.
Mm-hmm.
But these are men that were just purely, they are their product too. So it's a little bit different, right? So you're a bad reflection on them as a name, not just as a product.
Yeah. So speaking of that, and you can channel through the autobiographies or your own experience or the people that you've helped do the thing. But like, what do you think is the hardest thing for people to do the thing?
Just to start doing it is the hardest thing. Beginning. It's like anything else. It's like exercise, right? Or like jumping in a cold pool. Like, you're like, or when you're like, tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go to the gym. And then you wake up and you're like, yeah, maybe not today, tomorrow. Like, it's the same thing. These traits are in us on many different scales. It's the daily scale, like, should I go to the gym? And also the ambitious scale, like to start your own company. I also think people are initially inherently lazy, and as a defense mechanism, like that's their way of just like not doing something. But just like all those things I just mentioned, once you start going to the gym for 3 or 4 days in a row, you can get onto a streak. And the same thing is going to happen with, trying to fulfill a vision when you're trying to create something. You have to get in the swing of things.
Yeah. So when someone doesn't want to start something, but they really do.
Right. Like, I really want to go to the gym, but I don't feel like it today. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think could get them to do it?
I think they need to realize what they're doing. That's the hardest thing. They have to just sort of break through that barrier. You got to be like, am I not starting this because I don't want to, or am I not starting this because I'm scared, and I'm covering it up with laziness, or do I really not want to do this because I just don't feel like doing it? You can't, once you turn on, you can't really turn this off. You have to keep going, and you have to be prepared for the long haul. But I don't know. It's a fun ride. I don't know why anyone would be running away from it. Just go for it. It's going to change your life, and you can really steer yourself into a better situation by learning while you go along. Like, if you decide you're going to start a company, or you're going to create a business, or invent a product and bring it to market, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. And if you're not in the process, well, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. So this has all been great. If you have one piece of advice to give to people on doing the thing, what would it be? Your number one piece of advice?
My number one piece of advice not to sound like a Nike ad, but just do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, just do it.
Do you have anything else that helps you do the thing?
Well, one thing that I do is I always make sure to ask if I don't know something. So if somebody mentions something and I don't know what they're talking about, or I'm not sure about the reference, I will ask, like, oh, what is that? I never heard of that. Or tell me more about that, which sounds like such a simple thing to do, but I'm surprised by how many people don't. In fact, sometimes, because with my friends, I'll always call them out. Like when a question is, someone says something and I'm like, what is that? I never heard of that. And then they tell me, then I'll be like, I'll talk to the other 2 or 3 people with them. Like, you guys didn't know either, but you kept your mouth shut. Like, why? Because people, they think it's embarrassing to ask like simple questions. So don't be scared to ask simple questions.
Yeah, I really like that. Because do you think people, they're just afraid of looking dumb, or what do you think that is?
I don't know. I just feel like, I just learned something today. I get excited. I'm like, oh, cool. Maybe I should have known that, but whatever.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's good.
Yeah. So that's the one extra tidbit I wanted to add.
And then, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I asked you?
Yeah, I guess I would say, what happens when someone's got the ambition but a bad concept, right? Because we sort of touched on that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have to return to the proverbial drawing board and just keep going until they finally have something that's good. Because I think oftentimes when someone's been told their baby's ugly like 10 times, and that's it. They don't think maybe they got to try something else. Just if you fall down, get up again, but don't get up and do the same thing, right? You're just repeating, you're going to repeat all the same mistakes. Maybe you need to improve upon your business plan or your product concept. Maybe you need to have a whole new one, because your ambition, great. And that's going to be a big driver, but you have to have, you have to have more things in a row and ready to go than just the pure gut feeling that you're going to make it, despite what the concept is.
Yeah, that's so good. And then let's say somebody wants to learn about more about you and what you're doing, but also maybe they're interested. They're like, oh, I have a product idea. How does this work? Can you explain how they can reach out to you and what you'll be expecting from them and that type of thing?
Well, I'd expect to want to talk to them. That's the first thing. I'm always open to conversation. Let me get a sense of what they have, and what their means are, and get a sense of if I think they can do what needs to be done. Of course, there are more options than just bring something to market yourself. Like, people can always invent and license things, or just sort of develop it halfway and turn it over to somebody. So there's different levels. So I'd get a sense of what this person truly wants to do. As far as getting a hold of me, you can email me at matt@designedge.net, or you can go to our website, which is designedge.net. For some reason, a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn. So that's, for some reason, about 5 years ago, I had like 2,000 followers on LinkedIn. Then all of a sudden, it just started shooting up. So I'm in the 20,000 something followers now.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. How did you do that?
I don't know how that just started snowballing at one point, because it was like, in that 2000 thing for like years. And then I think it was, a couple of TV appearances, radio shows, podcasts. And then, when you post stuff and people share it, more people come along and they click it. Plus, I think I'm pretty highly visible, especially in the toy space. I sit on a bunch of boards, and I volunteer a lot. I sit on the executive board of directors of the United Inventors Association of America, which is the world's largest inventor advocacy and education group. It's a nonprofit that was born out of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And, we get a lot of visibility. And so people tend to find me through that as well.
That's so cool. Well, good. Well, yeah, you guys reach out to him if you have a product idea. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I have enjoyed working with you, and I'm still enjoying my tenses. I have been enjoying working with you. And this has been really valuable. I think you gave great insight. So
thank you for having me on, Stacey. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Do the Thing podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, but even more, we hope you'll be inspired to do the thing. Do you have a burning question on doing the thing that you'd like answered? How about an inspiring do the thing story of your own that you'd like to share? We'd love to hear all about it. Just leave us a voice message at dothething.callcast.co or email us at hello@dothethingpodcast.com.